US President Donald Trump has threatened to impose 25% tariffs on imports from the European Union, accusing the bloc of taking advantage of his country. His threat came at the first full cabinet meeting of his new administration and added to a series of announcements about import charges targeting two of his country's biggest trading partners, Canada and Mexico. The European Commission has described the president's latest tariff threat as unjustified, promising that Europe would react, quote, immediately and firmly. The president gave no details, but said an official announcement would come very soon, and he highlighted what he said was an unfair trading relationship.
European Union is a different case than Canada, different kind of case. They've really taken advantage of us in a different way. They don't accept our cars. They don't accept essentially our farm products. They use all sorts of reasons why not. And we accept everything of them. And we have about a $300 billion deficit with the European Union. Now, I love the countries of Europe. I guess I'm from there at some point a long time ago, right? But indirectly, pretty directly too, I guess. But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But the European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
DW's Brussels correspondent Christine Moundwa can talk us through the EU perspective on that. Christine, what have been the reactions to a US president who talks about Europe being formed to, quote, screw the United States?
Well, Gerhard, there's been a lot of reaction to that. And while many would think that these words would be easily dismissed, these words by the US president, they would have stung a lot of people in Europe who've essentially been watching this decades-old alliance between the European Union and the United States fragment with the coming in of the Trump administration. The Polish Prime Minister gave it this very simple remark where he just said the EU wasn't formed to screw anyone, leaving it there, really echoing a lot of the sentiments that people feel here. Of course, there's been a lot of fact-checking of all of this. For instance, the former Swedish Prime Minister, on his social media platform, really making the case about what the European Union's forming and foundation was really about. And I'll take a moment to just remind everybody here, Gerhard, that this union was formed in the aftermath of World War II. It was Europe's answer to ending the bloody and deadly conflicts that had been plaguing this continent for years, that culminated in that Second World War. And since then, there's been this strong alliance between the European Union and the United States. We've seen these two allies go out into the world, promoting development, democracy, peace, stability, and all while forging strong economic ties. So those words would have stung many here in Europe, those words by the US president.
Now, how is Europe likely to respond to these tariff threats?
Well, Gerhard, I can tell you that a huge effort here in Brussels is concentrated on, basically trying to avoid these tariffs having to be imposed, because Europe would have to respond, and then you could have some kind of an escalation, and there are fears of some kind of a trade war resulting in that. So, for instance, the Trade Commissioner here says his top priority is to avoid a situation where you inflict pain on both sides, because ultimately you will have to get to the table and get talking in any case. So they're trying to avoid a scenario. He said that he's been having talks with trade officials in the United States and that there is mutual sort of appetite and willingness to reduce tariffs on both sides. So cars were mentioned over there. Perhaps the European Union will maybe look into reducing its tariffs that it imposes on US car imports into the European Union. But definitely the European Union says it will respond. The fears are that this response will escalate the situation and put us into a very difficult trading territory.
DW's Brussels correspondent Christine Moundwa there. Thank you very much, Christine. And for more on the economic impact, Inga Fechner joins us now from Frankfurt. She's the senior economist for Germany and global trade at the ING Bank. Inga, do you think this 25% import tax on European imports will actually happen?
afraid that it will happen because it's rather a question of when, not if. Trump really made it clear that he sees Europe as one of the main targets on his list after China, probably. So in contrast to Canada and Mexico, I think that the EU is in a weaker position. So those 25% tariffs will come into effect probably in April. So in April, all those reports are due from the America First trade policy. And that probably is also at the latest the moment when Europe will also be officially targeted. But don't forget that we already will see tariffs on steel and aluminium in March 12th. So before this 25% tariff threat on probably all products, we already will see higher tariffs on steel and aluminium. And that might already be the reason or the first case where the EU has to prove itself.
Now, the US market, obviously very, very important for a lot of European companies. How dangerous are 25% US tariffs for the EU's sluggish economy?
It is going to hurt the European economy. So in contrast to Trump's first term, the EU is in a much weaker position. So growth is indeed really sluggish. And for Europe, the US market is the most important sales market. So 20% of all exports go to the US. And especially here in scope would be Germany because of its car exports to the United States. So although many German manufacturers do have production facilities in either the US or Mexico, some don't, and they still export huge amounts of cars to the US, so they would clearly be in target. It is going to be hurtful for EU exporters. It's also going to be hurtful for businesses, and above all, it already creates uncertainty. So it really weighs on investment decisions, on hiring decisions. It also weighs on consumer sentiment. So this whole situation creates lots of uncertainty, which is actually poison to do business.
Now, what can we learn from the tariffs on other American allies like Mexico and Canada that had been announced and then delayed? So can these tariffs on EU products be negotiated away, you think?
I think, first of all, it's a good sign that there's still room for deals, room for negotiation. So Trump likes to see himself as the deal maker. He emphasized in his fact sheets that he did a great deal with Canada and Mexico back in his first administration, so USMCA. He also stated that he had a great deal with China, although all of this is up for revision, so can't take his words for granted. But it shows us that there is at least some scope for negotiation. But I think it's going to be a lot harder to get a deal which is satisfactory for both sides. So Trump won't be easily satisfied with, for example, more soybeans and LNG purchases from the EU. So he really wants to see something which might also hurt the EU. So there is room for deals, but I think at least initially those tariffs will come into effect, and that it is indeed much harder for the European Union to negotiate those tariffs away.
Now, you said earlier that it's a question, or rather of when these tariffs will come and not if. So would you say we're already in a trade war with the US?
I wouldn't say we are already in a trade war. So what we can see from the US reaction is that they act reactively and not proactively. So they are really waiting for the official announcements. They're waiting for the official tariffs really coming into effect. They are still more in favor of negotiation rather than applying tariffs as well. But of course, there's always the threat that all this tariff action will spiral out of control. The European Union has made it clear that they will react. They also would apply tariffs themselves. They could restrict investment. They could really hurt the US economy. They could also target the digital services sector. They could target tech companies. So I wouldn't say that we are already in for trade war, and there's still hope that it won't turn into a full-blown trade escalation, a full-blown trade war, but the risk, of course, is always present.
Thank you very much, Inga Fechner there from the ING Bank, joining us from Frankfurt. Thank you.
you.